in the Thames estuary. The ship, officially called the Mi Amigo, was swept from her moorings off Margate late last night. She sank on the notorious long sand in the early hours. The 4 crew members were picked up in mountainous seas by the Sheerness lifeboat.
All you could see of the Mi Amigo today as she slowly sank was her mast. Earlier, as the sea gushed in, the crew had been forced to abandon her and £100,000 worth of equipment, but not before saying farewell to their 500,000 listeners.
Not a very good occasion, really. I have to hurry this because the lifeboat is standing by. We're not leaving and disappearing. We're going onto the lifeboat, hoping that the pumps can take it. If they can, we'll be back. If not, well, I don't like to say it.
I think we'll be back one way or another,
yeah,
Tom.
I think so.
From all of us, for the moment, goodbye and God bless.
Radio Caroline started broadcasting its pop music in 1964 and was rapidly followed by a succession of pirate radio ships until they were outlawed 3 years later. But the Caroline crew carried on broadcasting illegally and fairly profitably until last night, in spite of having to abandon ship last year in a similar storm.
The ship, called the Mi Amigo, now lies in the Thames estuary between Essex and Kent. The crew of 4 were rescued by the Sheerness lifeboat. Prakash Merchandani reports.
The Mi Amigo started dragging its anchor in 12-foot waves yesterday afternoon. Finally, the anchor, which once belonged to a supertanker, snapped. The ship's engines were out of order, and it grounded on a sandbank. The Coast Guard decided to evacuate, and the rescue took place just after midnight. The crew, 3 Englishmen, 1 Dutchman, and Wilson the Canary, were brought back to Sheerness.
Believe it or not, nobody panicked. It was very orderly. Everybody worked very hard. There was a lot to be done, so there wasn't much time to actually panic. We were resting on the sandbank, and it was when we came off of the sandbank and were hitting the bottom of the ship with the sandbank that the holes began to appear in the generator room.
Were you broadcasting all the way through this?
Yeah, sure.
Radio Caroline has had a checkered pirate career since it pioneered pop radio in the early 60s. Many of its DJs found a home in the BBC's Radio 1 after pirate stations were banned. 2 years ago, the aging Mi Amigo returned to the Kent coast. Its crew have already been rescued once before, and it's also been the scene of a mutiny attempt. But, say its wet, though undeterred DJs...
broke from its moorings in last night's gale force winds and drifted onto a sandbank. The 4-man crew were rescued unharmed by lifeboat, but could now face prosecution. Here's Tim Child.
Only the top of Radio Caroline's transmitting mast was still showing above the waves this afternoon. Early today, the 400-ton motor vessel Mi Amigo was torn loose from its moorings 12 miles off Clacton. The ship drifted helplessly in the force 9 winds, ran aground on a sandbank, and was then submerged by the huge waves. The Sheerness lifeboat rescued the 4-man crew, even bringing off their canary. Their ordeal ended at Sheerness police station, where they were questioned for some time before being released. The sinking seems to be the end of the original and most successful of the pop radio pirates. Caroline first went on the air in 1964 and survived a series of disasters. She was off the air for 5 years after the government cracked down on the pirates with the Marine Broadcasting Officers Act. Several times the battered 50-year-old boat drifted, nearly sank or ran aground. There were cash problems, prosecutions, even a threatened hijacking, and lifeboat men called the ship a death trap after an earlier rescue operation.